Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Diane. You know, we met about a year ago, and it's always nice to, you know, kind of listen to someone speak and you have a heart connection. You feel like, oh, wow, that's really something what she was talking about. And she made it so alive for us, her experience. It was like you were there in her near-death experience because she speaks so well, and I'm sure that you've all experienced that on some level when she speaks, or even you can hear it and feel it when she plays her beloved music. So, so thank you for inviting me here. And it's great to be back home. I'm from Chicago, so this is my hometown. And I love Chicago. I can't believe how much it's changed and shifted over the years. And it just seems to keep getting bigger and bigger. And that's kind of amazing, you know. But it's still got its loving properties, you know, and my family is here, and so I get to come visit with them. They're here with me today, and it's family is so important, no matter what your journey is, and your family may not be a birth family. It can be a chosen family. So I think that that's kind of important as well, is that sometimes we do choose our families, or we choose, you know, the people in our lives to nourish us. And I feel very actually blessed that I have family that I not only love, but I like, and they nourish me. And so with that said, I don't know if most of you were here as we were trying to struggle with all of this equipment. But let me just share with you that that is very typical for me, okay? So lights go on and off, things break. My husband decides that he's going to, any electrical item I purchase, there is definitely some extra thing that he's got to pay for to make sure in case it breaks. And it probably will. You know, that I've got something to back me up. So I'm not surprised. And John, we had it working initially, didn't we? And I left and I came back and then it wasn't working. So that's kind of like life. And it's kind of like what I'm going to talk about today, which is not on that screen right now. But we'll get it right there. So it's personal and it's a hero's journey. And I guess, have you guys heard of Joseph Campbell? Yes. Okay, so this is a take, really, my talk today, it's a thread of the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is that we have an ordinary life. We're going along. Everything just seems great, right? And then something hits us. Maybe it's a near-death experience. Maybe it's a spiritual emergency. Maybe it's all of a sudden you look at a mirror and you don't see yourself. And it's some memory that has jogged you, that has come up from something that you cannot explain, that you don't have words for, and you're trying to make sense of it. What is going on, right? And then you go into this spiritual crisis, if you will, because you're trying to make sense of it. And in that trying to make sense of this, there's a grief. There's a sense of loss. There's a sense of who am I, as I've been struck, as I've been hit with kind of this unknowing. We don't have the language for it. It's like you're speaking a foreign language, or all of a sudden you've landed in a place and you're the only one who has a memory of who you were, but nobody else does. It's like, who am I? And then you go into that, and then you come out, going back into that ordinary life. You're right back in there. You're back into that ordinary life, but you're not the same. You are different than you've ever been. But everybody comes up to you and says, oh, hi, Edy. How are you? I'm fine. But I'm Edy but I'm kind of not Edy, but I am Edy, but you don't really know me. You don't know me for who I now have become. Have any of you experienced that? Show of hands? Yeah, there's a lot of people here. So it's very halting, isn't it? It's very arresting. It's emotionally arresting when this happens. So a spiritual emergency can happen in anyone's life. Now, a little bit about me. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm in New York. I do keynotes. I do past life regression. I've been trained in shamanism. And I have moved into the life of the spiritual world, and then I move out. And then I move in, and I move out. And when I move out, it's because I think, I'm going to be judged. Or maybe this isn't so good. But it always comes back, and it comes knocking on my door. And it says, come on, wake up. Don't do this. You got to go back home. So, equipment breaking, it's home. I don't know what life would be if I didn't have equipment break or not work. And that's okay. So, in these spiritual experiences and these spiritual emergencies and these NDEs, these near-death experiences, a lot of times when people talk about a near-death experience, what they talk about is a near-death experience where you're quickly taken out of your body. You're in surgery, you have an accident, something happens, and you die. And then the reports are constant, right? They're consistent. I see myself above my body. I can tell you everything that was going on in the room. I can tell you what happened, what color shirt you were wearing. I can tell you everything. I'd have to say that though I haven't had a near-death experience that I can give you a data point on, what I have experienced, I believe, was a near-death experience kind of in utero. And in the womb, I think that there was a struggle. I think that there was a struggle within me. I think that there was a struggle with my mother. I think that there was a struggle. And breech births, my breech birth, was, I was buttocks first. And I believe that I lost something. I struggled. And what they say is when a child has to struggle to get into the world, sometimes, and it's very Freudian and I'm not Freudian, you have to struggle in your life. And you've learned how to be a fighter. So I came into the world fighting. I came into the world cranky. I came into the world as a warrior. And, you know, warriors are amazing. Warriors need a fight, right? Oh man, I got a lot of yeses on that one, right? Okay, so this warrior was. Have you heard? Because I know she's spoken here, Dr. Atwater.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Dr. Atwater.
Coming in November.
She's coming in November. I didn't even know. Okay. Well, there you go. So what's so curious is when she outlines what a child goes through with a near-death experience, which is curiosity, feeling older than you are, knowing things that you shouldn't know for your age. That was me. I was always telling my mother what she should or shouldn't be doing. And at the ripe old age of 2, I ran into my poor parents. Oh, my poor parents. I ran into my parents' bedroom. Now I'm 2 years old. I'm very verbal. And I'm very active. Oh, I could tell you stories, but I won't. So I'm very verbal. I run into their bedroom. It's about, I don't know, 3 a.m. I'm up, and I run into their room and I say, why was I born if only to die? I don't understand. Would you please explain it to me? Now, can you imagine being parents and having your 2-year-old run into the bedroom and say, why was I born if only to die? And that was my first data point, really, that something had happened. That I was feeling something. And it really got me into this whole journey of death and loss. And I have really worked with death and grief and loss my whole life, whether I wanted to or not. And it always knocked. And I kind of just call myself this grief doula, if you will. Okay? So, a doula, we know doulas, right? And you know what? Doulas are amazing, right? They are the witnesses. They are the bearers. They are the caretakers. They are the birth givers. They are so magnificent in watching life. And they also help in dying. And they help to move you into the next journey. But they are journey people. They are the ones who help you move into your journey. Your journey as a mother, your journey even as a father, because that grief doula, that doula, especially if it's a birthing doula, is working with the father and with the mother to help them figure out, just how to peacefully generate life, give it, move it forward. So what's so curious is that in this grief doula perspective, I have found myself in that position from yay high. So again, a doula is that caretaker. So there I am again, and I think it's important because where we came from frames everything. And so it framed this notion of, I want to help. So there I am, now I'm a 4-year-old and I'm walking down the street and I want to save every homeless person, I want to save every animal, and I can't understand why I can't bring them all home. Why can't they be rescued? And that really is an important piece here, because we want to rescue, but this is where the grief doula piece becomes important. It is not my role to rescue anyone. It is the role of that person, that person who's going through the pain of trying to figure out how to be here. It's on them. It's on you. And it's learning how to listen on a lot of different levels. Listening with your eyes, listening with your ears, listening with your heart, kinesthetic. Listening with your taste, listening with your smell. And one of the things that I talk a lot about is how to listen. Because that listening, whether I'm doing a past life regression, whether there's shamanism, is really important. And how we listen to our partners, how we listen to our caretakers, how we listen to our parents, to our nieces, to our husbands, our wives. That listening and the caricature of that listening is really important. And we live right now in a world where we've cut off some of that listening. And in that cut off, I'm going to go back. Remember I was talking about spiritual emergencies? We're in it. Amen. We are in it. And we're so in it, not just because it's a cutoff, because there's always been, from generation to generation, oh, this is going to be a problem. Oh, driving a car, when Ford invented the car, You know what they thought? That if people went over 12 miles an hour, they were going to die. Okay, so I could be saying that we're in a spiritual emergency, but there's data here. We've got more data. And that data is important. Because the spiritual emergency is the parents who are in their phones and the children who aren't looking. And aren't seeing their parents' eyes because they're here. The spiritual emergency is also when the child doesn't know how to engage. Have you gone to a restaurant lately and seen some, and I don't care how old, it can be from yay high to people who are in their 90s and they're looking at their phones and they're ordering food.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. And that's part of the spiritual kind of crisis that we're in. And we don't know what to do. And I'm guilty of it. How to put down their phone. How to come back and listen. And listen deeply and intently and with courage and with that warrior. The warrior is so important. So, right now, there's this 4-year-old, but I'd also like to just, for a moment, go back to that 4-year-old because I want to just tell you again about something that is about definitely past life. So I'm now 4. And we live in this cute little house in this cute little neighborhood. And I loved walking in the rain. And I was curious. Once again, curious. But I wasn't just curious and I didn't just not sleep. I didn't sleep. And then I wandered. So what would I do? I'd leave the house and I'd walk down my street. And I'd go into people's houses. And I'd sit down and I'd turn on the TV. And I'd watch TV. Now, I'm saying this because it's a restlessness. And part of having a near-death experience can be a restlessness. Can be, again, I don't know where I belong. And it wasn't until one of the neighbor friends called my parents and said, "Do you know where your daughter is?" And they go, "Yeah, she's in bed at the house. I mean, she's here." Well, actually, she's in her back room watching TV. And again, I'm telling you these, not to reveal so much of myself, but really to help you realize that whatever age you are now, you are all the ages that you were before. And so if you were curious, or if you were a wanderer, or if your near-death experience caused a shift in you, then something needs to be paid attention to. And paying attention to these messages is really, really important. And again, these messages are part of that hero's journey. So I'm going to continue talking now about the hero's journey. Joseph Campbell, wonderful quote. He says, "It is by going down into the abyss that we recover the treasures of life. Where you stumble, there lies your treasure." Where you stumble, there lies your treasure. So when we have a spiritual emergency, it's a stumble. When we emerge spiritually, it can also be a stumble. But that stumble can be your greatest teacher, just like grief. And it's a wonderful thing to know, oh, I'm going to stumble, or I'm stumbling, or this is hard, and instead of, this is hard and I've met a wall, that instead, you're actually meeting your teacher. You're actually, every time there's a struggle, every time there's a difficult moment, every time there's a crisis, it's a teacher. And if you can align yourself around, what is the teacher here? How am I going to build myself up? How am I going to get stronger? What is the message here? Oh, then you're on a path. And you're on that hero's journey. So I love Joseph Campbell, and I love Joseph Campbell because he also, one of the things he does is everyone can relate to this hero's journey. Because we all have shifts and moments when we change in our lives. We all have those hiccups. We all have those monumental shifts. We all have times when there's an awakening. I look at grief in 11 phases, and we're going to talk about grief in greater detail in the second part today. But these 11 phases, because grief is complete, it moves in and out of itself. All of the different phases, they move in and out. And in the moving in and out, do you know what happens? You realize, oh my gosh, grief is not linear. There's no one path. Neither is the journey of the soul. There's no one path. Neither are the hiccups in our lives. There's no one path. So each awakening moment is a moment where you can start to do things differently, where you can take yourself on, where you can start to learn from yourself. You can start to change what goes on in the brain. And past life regressions changes what goes on in the brain. And again, I'll talk more about that, but let me just give you a little teaser. I worked with a woman for 1 year doing one past life. Her entire life changed. Her life didn't look anything like the life she had when she first started seeing me. And it wasn't because of the work she was doing in this life. It was because of the work she was doing in her past life. And I will tell you more about that, and I will also share my own past life experiences, some of them anyway. I trained with Brian Weiss and Roger Wilger. They were amazing teachers to me because they made you feel that whatever you learned, whatever you heard, whatever you experienced, it was alive. And they taught not to doubt, but to take in. And that if you doubted, if you weren't sure, that was just part of it. And to integrate it. And that integration is just part of being human. So I talk about the integration with past lives, the integration of the dance of grief, and your journey with grief, and the integration of a near-death experience, and the integration of moving from an ordinary life into dilemma and hardship and turmoil and back into that ordinary life. And we've all had it. Little ways and big ways. So, Joseph Campbell is a teacher. He's one teacher of many. One of the things I'd like you to think about is who are your teachers? And what have they taught you? And how do you ask them for more information? And maybe they're guides, and maybe they're a sister or a brother. Maybe they're a doctor. Maybe there's information from your NDE that you have taken in, that you may have been keeping at bay, that you can invite in. And I invite you to be an inviter. I invite you to be that hero or heroine and invite in. It's really important. So, I've gone over this doula piece, but what I want to tell you about a little bit is when you can really ask your own doula to come in, because we are all doulas. We are all healers. And you can ask the doula to come in when you've had something health-related, when you're struggling with something within your body, within your mind, within your heart, when you've had life experiences. Now, one of the things that I've done in my own life is I used to work with HIV/AIDS. And one of the things that they used to do is they would put these men in 4-bedded rooms, and they would each see how the other was doing, and they would watch each other die. Now, there were many who would leave their bodies and then come back, and leave their bodies and then come back. And they were able to certainly share with us what was going on for them. And what helped them was a sense of calm. They came back and they were calmer. And then it was like a gift to the others in that 4-bedded room. It was a gift because they understood that they were going to be okay. And that this was just a lesson. It was just a lesson, and that's okay. And then we need our lessons. It was a hard lesson, but it's a lesson. So working with HIV/AIDS made me realize that this conversation about grief and loss had to be much bigger than just someone dying. It needed to be on a much more global level. So grief and loss is what we experience when we give something up. Maybe when we come back and we don't want to come back. Maybe when we don't want to be born and we are. Or maybe when we don't want to leave. So that's really important. So another piece to this is I converted all of this into my private practice. Now, it was kind of secret that I did the shamanism and I did the past life regression. You know, sometimes it happened, sometimes it came up, but for the most part, I was just going along being a New York City therapist, and I did my things, and I worked kind of secretly, like behind a veil, okay? But what's interesting is that no matter how much we want to veil ourselves, it keeps begging to come out. It's hungry. And I realized that grief is hungry. And not only is it hungry, but it wants to be seen and nourished. And spirituality wants to be seen and nourished. So how do you nourish it? You pay attention. So my first few tries at bringing it out, well, some were successful, but some weren't. So I'm going to tell you why one of them wasn't. Because we don't realize when we start to get in touch with that spiritual part of ourselves, and it starts to really have a life, how much energy there is in it. There's energy in a touch. There's energy in a look. There's energy in a glance. There's energy. And that energy is so compelling. So I'm talking to this young woman, and at that time my office was very small. I mean, it was almost so small that my knee and your knee would be touching. I mean, that's how small. Okay. So I was careful, and if I approached and if I asked to touch someone, I was always asking, may I touch you? So for this particular client, I said, you know, I knew that she needed something more than just, let me listen to your story. As an aside, we tell our stories so often that we stop listening, and then they don't have as much value. So sometimes the story has to be told a different way. Sometimes the story has to be told in the way we breathe. Sometimes the story has to be told in the music that we might bring in. Sometimes the story has to be told through drumming or rattling. Okay, so her story needed to be told without her voice, because it had been told so many times she was no longer hearing it. So I went up and I said, may I touch you? And she said, sure. I said, may I touch your knee? Just your knee. This is how I'm going to touch it. I showed her on my knee. She, full permission, touched her knee, and she was like, oh! I just felt so much energy, and she got scared. And it was in that moment that I realized there's a lot more that has to be done before I can do that. There has to be a lot more warm-up. There has to be much more conversation. And that's what we need to be having with ourselves, because we're shocked. We're surprised by our own power. Especially if you've come back and something is very different. Something is very changed. And it's so changed that what you are putting out there, people are seeing or picking up or perceiving in ways that they never perceived before. And you're not so aware of it. So I want you to, understand that sometimes you don't even know your own power. But it's here. I can feel it in this room. I can feel the essence of your own warriors and the power. And don't underestimate it. Move into it and let it be your teacher. And understand that it's also your greatest teacher. It's also an ally. So we're going to take a break at...
We can go another 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, I just wanted to check that out. So one of the things that I also do in my sessions, other than the past life regression or the touching and the shamanism, is EMDR, which is a structure within the brain. Do you guys know that? Have you heard of it? Yes. Great. Wow, that's fantastic. So those of you who haven't, it's actually a wonderful, it's a very long EMDR, eye movement, desensitization, and restructuring. Long. I like EMDR better. So EMDR is a way of actually changing the way you hold trauma. Changing the way that the brain holds on to things that are negative. And it is a wonderful ally. And what it does is you're going left brain, right brain, left brain, right brain. And it can be done either moving left or right with your eyes. I don't like that as much. It was originally made for the eye movement, just like this. What I find with the eye movement, just to go into this a little bit, is that when I'm doing this, people are having a hard time seeing. Whereas when I tap, or I have them hold, there are pods. Yep. And when they hold, I'm getting a yes. So when they hold these little pods, they're about this big, and when they hold the pods, it vibrates, left, right, left, right. In that moment, when the left, right pods make their, sometimes they also make sounds, but they vibrate. In those moments, what's happening, it's really exciting, is that the brain is actually moving. It's going back and forth, left brain, right brain, right brain. And the negative thinking begins to shift, or the trauma begins to shift, or the outlook or perspective begins to shift. So I was in a car accident. Not a bad car accident, 20 years ago, right by my house, and car plowed into me. And every time I go by that area, my heart would race. I'd get agitated. Nothing happened to me. I was fine, but my heart was just agitated. So I happened to be going, actually, to an EMDR training. Well, we do EMDR in order to train on ourselves, or with a partner. So there I am doing this EMDR, and I decided I'm going to use the exercise. I'm going to use the accident. So I used the accident, and the next time I'm home, nothing. And when I go by that place, I have changed from a negative cognition, which is, this is a very dangerous place, this intersection, to, I'm okay. I'm fine, to a positive cognition. And that's what EMDR does. It really helps to change the brain. And there's so much that's going on now about the brain, and we're just beginning this research. And so for people who have had horrific accidents, for anyone who's just had a hard time in life, EMDR is fantastic. So that is one wonderful, wonderful tool that I use. And I use it within healing. Now, shamanism, there's drumming, there's rattling, and everybody reacts differently to it. But I'd like to just kind of close this session right now. I'd like everybody, if you will, to put your hand like this. Right. Okay. And I'd like you to just now relax it. And if you want to close your eyes, you can. You do not have to if you don't want to. You could also just have a soft focus. Soft focus means finding a place on the rug or finding a place on your shoe, a shoelace, and just allowing your eyes to relax. And now, for a moment, I'd like you to just think of something that has moderately stressed you or given you some sense of fear. And I just want you to have that thought for a moment and let it rest. And then I'd like you to imagine a beautiful waterfall. I mean, this is the most gorgeous waterfall you have ever seen. And it's got that pool of water at the bottom. And the pool is also lovely. It's a beautiful color, whatever color you want it to be. It could be any color at all. Now I want you to take that thought, that moderately invasive thought, and I'd like you to imagine that it is attached to a ribbon. But this ribbon is a very special ribbon. This ribbon actually has movement, and it can move through your hand to the waterfall. And the waterfall will be the collector. The waterfall will take it. And the conveyor will be your hand. It'll be your hand. And allow it to flow, that ribbon, through your hand to the waterfall. And as it goes, just think to yourself, release. And as you're releasing, breathe out. And letting it go. And do it again. And letting it go. And doing it one more time. And now, allow yourself to just see it move away from you. It's moving away. It's moving away. It's moving away. And now what replaces it, as you shake off your hand, is just a sense of calm. And take in a breath and let it go and release your hand. And that is a shamanic exercise right there. So it doesn't have to be like I'm wearing a headdress and I'm giving you ayahuasca to get stoned so you can go travel. It can be as simple as that. So I look forward to seeing you after our break. Thank you. I want to thank everyone who came up to me during the break and for your stories and just how alive you all are in just your presence and the sharing of whatever's going on for you. And the essence, I think, of today's talk is we're not alone. You know, we are in a crowded room. And that crowded room is filled with our parents, our partners, our friends, our foes, and they journey with us. And when someone comes into my office, I think to myself, I wonder who's in this room. Not just because of the spirit within my head, the spiritual stuff, but I wonder who's walking with them. I wonder who's affected them. I wonder who holds their stories, and I wonder who doesn't. And so the question that I always ask is, who's in this room? What made you pick up that phone? Because something made you pick up that phone. And before you pick up a phone and you reach out for help, and you reach out for someone to give you some solace or a path or a way to work through something, there's something that has to happen. Maybe it's a spiritual emergency, or maybe it's one spiritual emergence and they don't know what to do with it. And that spiritual emergence, it's like it comes and it knocks. I have a magnet on my refrigerator, and it's a pirate's like treasure chest, and there's like a little button on it, and when you press the button, there's a knock. And it says, "Let me out of here!" And, you know, that's kind of like a spiritual emergency and emergence. So I wanted to just break down for you what we're going to talk about in this last part today. And so, I don't know if all of you know this, but I was, I don't exactly know how I'm going to tell this story, so I just got to kind of take a pause and think about it for just a moment. So, in 2008, 2009, there was a financial crisis. Do we remember that there was? Oh, we do, huh? Well, all of us were affected. All of us, on one level. And if we weren't affected, then we know someone who was. Would you agree to that statement?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm glad we all are in agreement with that one. So, we had a family business, and we lost everything. Everything. And I was still a therapist, but I thought, oh, I don't need to work so hard. I can work 20 hours a week, which is considered full-time, but I can do other things. I became a ceramic artist. I sold my work all over the world. I got into my spiritual path. I just had a lot of time because I was working my 20 hours a week, and then, boom. Talk about a spiritual emergency. Who am I? What am I going to do? I'm scared. I'm terrified. And I don't know how I'm going to navigate this. I mean, I know that I've got my family, and we are very tight, and we'll figure it out. But I knew that I was going to have to get to work. I knew that something huge was going to have to happen. So I was traveling all over the United States doing pottery shows because I had the time to do that. And I loved my pottery. It was my second part of me. It was my soul. And it was a part of me that had a self-expression, and we all need to have creative means for our self-expression, whether it's art, music, dance, whether it's reading, writing, whether it's having a great storytelling conversation with a friend, whatever the case may be. But what was so curious was like I was stuck. I was like a deer in the headlights. It's like, oh, what am I going to do now? So, have you heard of Psychology Today? Do you know of Psychology Today? Okay, so they're a magazine, but they also have an online presence for therapists. So you can put your name up, and you can, give your history, and then people look for you among the hundreds and thousands of therapists, and if you're lucky, they find you. So I did not want to have my picture up on this Psychology Today. I wanted to just give who I am and what I do, and if somebody came to me, great. But if nobody came to me, great. Whatever. Whatever was supposed to be was supposed to be. That was always the thing. What was curious is that when this crisis happened, I realized I'm going to have to put my picture up. Ugh, I don't want to put my picture up. I'm going to have to put my picture up. No, I don't want to put. And I have this spiritual conversation with myself. Do you ever have these conversations? The yes, no conversations, the conversation, yes, I will do this. No, I'm not going to do this. Yes, I am going to do this. No, I'm not going to do this. Well, I got to yes. I got to yes. I dreamt about it. My people talked to me about it. I went back to therapy about it. I mean, it was a big deal. It was a big deal. A picture. That's all it was. It was a dumb picture. But I put it up. And 3 weeks later, I get a phone call from A&E TV. And they're asking me to come and talk to them about being a therapist on the show Psychic Kids. And all of a sudden, something happens. It's like, what? How did this happen? I put my picture up. And had I not put my picture up, probably this wouldn't have happened. And I auditioned once, I went back again, I auditioned again, and for 2 years I was a psychotherapist on Psychic Kids. Now, I tell you this story, and I've actually got a clip. Would you guys like to see it a little bit? Yeah. All right. So I've got a clip of Psychic Kids and me. It's called a sizzle reel. And what a sizzle reel is that you put a culmination of your work together, and then when you want to do more work in the field, although I'm kind of not doing that as much anymore, but you know, you send it around and they get sizzled by you, I guess, or dazzled by you, or I don't know. So, but it changed my whole life. But with that said, and all of a sudden my financial crisis wasn't such a bad financial crisis, because now I had a platform, and I had Psychic Kids, and I had followers, and there was a path. But again, that crisis, and it was a huge crisis, and it doesn't sound like it was so big, but I didn't know what I was going to do without this family business. So all of a sudden, it was like one thing closed, and this is one of the lessons. One thing closed and another thing opened. And before I show you these clips, there's something else that I want to show you. This is called an Ouroboros. Have you seen this before? Okay, I love Ouroboroses. I love them because they are the snake, and it's an ancient symbol, and you can read this. I'm not going to read it to you. You all can read, okay? Okay, but it is birth and it is death. It is life and it is death. And the Ouroboros is really what we do. It is the cycle. It is these cycles. It is the spiritual emergency. It is the spiritual emergence. That is what the Ouroboros really is emblematic of. And it's exciting because this is what we do. And this example of the Psychic Kids, okay, what it showed is something in me died, and something around me died. God bless you. And you know what's so curious is that it opened up. It opened something up to be born. And it changed the whole trajectory, really, of my life. I probably wouldn't have finished my book had it not been for Psychic Kids. I probably wouldn't have done the coming out with my own spirituality, with my own beliefs, had I not done Psychic Kids. So it was the opening of me saying, okay, I give up. I'm not going to hide anymore. I'm no longer going to be veiled. Here it is. And it's a lesson for all of us of not being veiled, of opening yourselves up and saying, I want to hide. I might not want to talk about certain things because I'm afraid, or I don't want you to know, or I don't want to know myself. And what Psychic Kids did was it allowed me to own myself, and I've never looked back in terms of that ownership. Now, let me also say that when Psychic Kids ended, I went into another spiritual emergency. So, you know, when a gift comes, it's taken away as well. But then, guess what? There's other gifts. Because then that opened up another journey and another adventure. And that is the hero's journey. So I will always go back to this hero's journey. How we change, how we shift, how we own that. So are you ready for some Psychic Kid stuff? Okay, so let me just give you a little kind of entree into this. These are tiny little clips with me talking to the mothers and the children who are struggling with some of their psychic abilities, and the parents are also struggling. They're very badly struggling. And you'll see this. Let me also say, and this is tender. This is really tender. But oftentimes when a child is psychic, there's been other things that have been going on that are ugly. Because another part of the brain takes over. And they map in ways, if someone's been sexually, physically abused, they start to map in ways that someone who hasn't can't. So I want you to kind of, understand, and I'm not saying that happened to any of these kids. What I am saying is that the potential for pain, the potential for hurt, opens up other paths, other pathways, other ways of knowing or seeing. Remember I talked about listening? Other ways of listening. So they're listening in ways that they may not have ever listened before. Okay. So I'm just wondering, is there any way to dim these just a little bit?
Yes.
That was a little loud. Okay, let's try to get that so that it's, let's see here. I don't know how to shut. All right. And again, this is like you'll see like it's professionally done, so, you'll just see this opening with me. Okay, here we go. How does it feel for you to have two parents who love you dearly and who don't believe you?
It's fine. I mean, I dealt with it.
No, I need some real answers here. You're giving me answers that you're used to giving.
It sucks.
Swallowed anger equals anxiety. Do they know how angry you are about them not believing you?
No.
I try to find explanations. When she tells me, she doesn't tell me all the time.
How do you think she feels about your disbelief?
Well, I'm sure she feels a little betrayed.
I'm wondering if there's a way for you to honor who she is, maybe by changing the way you respond.
Well, I'm not sure how to accept this, though.
I'm not asking for conversion here. She just needs to know that you'll listen. How long have the evil spirits been in your bedroom?
5 or 6 years.
Has anyone ever said to you, you're crazy? Tell me about what they would do.
I used to tell them that I see ghosts. And they would say that I'm weird.
And then what?
They say that I am stupid.
What do you do when they say that?
I believe them.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna teach you some ways to be stronger, okay?
Do you understand that the more that you protect him, the less chance he has of having a voice? This is really the beginning of you needing to separate from Bryson. If you don't do it, you're gonna have an old man living in your house, and he's gonna be your son. One of the things that's kind of wonderful about change is that when one thing changes, everything around it can change. And this may be the beginning of you having a better relationship with your stepdad. Some people might say, you know, this girl, she's like making all this up, and she's totally nuts. She's crazy, right? What would you say to them?
They probably haven't seen what I've seen, so how do they know? No one has less fear.
When you get afraid, I want you to take a picture of this feeling right now. Was there ever a time that you as a mother said to yourself, something is wrong with my child, I need my child to see a doctor?
Well, the testing started in 2nd grade, and the tests were fine.
What goes on in this house?
We found out that at least 10 passed away here. These people were being taken care of here till they died. And the men were kept in Olivia's room.
What is your greatest fear for her?
My fear is that Liv's gonna have a breakdown.
Going to be going away to college soon? What are your fears around that?
It's going to be difficult for me because I'm going to have to live with other people, and if they don't believe me, I'll just feel so just kind of shoved to the side.
Yeah. You know, there are some people who would say, oh, she's got this really active imagination. You're going to need to learn how to temper what you say, even though you may see certain things.
Yeah.
I feel the need to protect. Because if she gets scared or needs to talk, if I'm not there,
Well, you're being a good mom.
who's going to do it?
When you told your parents that you had these abilities,
I was 8. I didn't want to sleep alone.
How did you distinguish between, oh, I'm imagining this, as opposed to this is real and I'm feeling this?
Because it was so real. You
You
can
could-
see things all the time that other people can't see, and there's no pushing it to the back of your head because it's like with you.
What's the hardest?
So,
Pretty amazing, huh? So, I guess we could put up the lights again. You want me to? Okay. So, thank you, Diane. While Diane goes and puts on the lights, it's what's so compelling about each of these stories, and what each of them feel is fear, not being heard, being disbelieved, and being thought of as crazy. And I'm wondering, okay, so this is Psychic Kids, right? But I'm wondering if you all have felt that at some time, where there was no one to talk to, no one who you thought might believe you, where you were not trusting. And that's why I have this next piece on trust, because trust is such a huge part of this work. And trusting the self, trusting a friend that you can share what's going on for you, and trusting that whatever you are experiencing is real and has value. So this slide here, I think it's important because, you know, when we talk about trust, you've got to be convicted. You've got to have conviction. Maybe you do have to be convicted, I don't know. But, you know, trust means having conviction, confidence, expectation. You know, there is a desire, there's a hunger, there's a yearning. And what gets in the way of trust is being around someone who you can't talk to, who you don't believe, or you don't believe believes you. That they doubt you. And that doubt, it stirs us. It makes us feel uncomfortable, It makes us doubt ourselves if we don't have a sense of differentiation, if we don't have a sense of autonomy, a sense of I own me. And there's grief when you can't trust. And what do we yearn for? We yearn to trust. We yearn to be seen. We yearn to have someone mirror back to us that we're okay. And then we want to be able to own it. Really own, this is who I am, and this is the way I want to be. And look at me and see me and make it okay. And it might just be a moment in time, and that moment in time can pass. But honor it. Honor it. So you saw some of those parents and you saw, what did they say? I don't understand my child. I want to stay away, kind of. Or I'm going to stay so connected, that I'm not going to let him be. That was the comment of you're going to have an old man living in your house. And we can have our old selves living within us, and those old selves, they get in the way. And they get in the way of our spiritual journeys. They get in the way of our quests. And this is about interrupting whatever gets in the way. Whatever gets in the way. So part of trust is also having someone you can depend on. And having trust is a custody of the self, for sure. And faith and belief in you. And those are really important qualities. They're important because if we don't have that ownership, then what happens with that spiritual journey? We give it over, we don't honor it, and then we go down that really, really hard path. Does that make sense? Okay. So we talk about trust, and then for each of these, when you lose trust, there's an emotional crisis, there's a spiritual crisis. And trust, like the work of grief, starts with the self. And I'll talk about it. When I talk about my book, I'll talk more about it, but really the book is really about knowing yourself. When you know yourself, you can forge ahead, you can heal. It's not outside of yourself, it's in here. It's in your heart, it's in your belly, it's in your brain. It starts in here though. If we start looking out there for someone else to be the magician, to make it all better, and we don't do our work, then we leave the magician without any tools. We need to step and meet the magician. We need to step and meet our healers, or guides, or whatever you want to call it. We need to step in and say, yes, I'm working too. And I'm going to partner with you. And I'm going to partner with you in a really big way. So, this trust piece is something to just really think about. And I urge you to think about it within your own life, within your own scope. And just even ask yourself, who am I trusting? Who do I trust? What's going on for me? Where don't I trust? And what gets in the way of me trusting? So, we're going to move on now. So, I just want to talk a little bit about meeting the self and how you meet the self. And you meet the self through your body, through your mind, through your emotions. I'm just going to quickly go through this. And within each of these, you can meet the self. It is like, okay, body, what's going on with you today? Hello, body. What hurts? What feels great? How can I pay attention? My emotions. Where are my emotions today? Map them out. Make a diagram. What are my negative cognitions? The negative cognition is, I can't do this. I'm scared. How can I counter that? With a more positive thought. So this is taking your temperature. And if you do it every day, wow, there's an awakening. And that awakening can catapult you and move you to places spiritually that you cannot even imagine. But again, it's tackling the self. It's going into the self and becoming your own magician. And then, guess what? The healers who are out there, who are really great healers, they can do their jobs. They can help you. Whether it's a Western doctor, Eastern doctor, a shaman, they can help you because you're helping yourself. And that's really important. So, again, we're talking about trauma and grief and life-changing events. And I'm not going to go into these 11 phases of grief, but I see that these 11 phases move in and out of one another, and we start with what I call emotional armor. And the emotional armor, we all need emotional armor, right? And emotional armor is numbness. Emotional armor is hysteria. Emotional armor is denial. Emotional armor is protest and despair. No, this is not happening. I don't want this to happen. But we all have this emotional armor. And you know why we have this emotional armor? It's safe. It's safe. It's our safe haven. And we always go back. We always go back to that emotional armor. I don't care where you are in the phase, we go back. So if someone is going along and they start to go into a phase where they're angry and they're anxious, and those are two different phases, and it starts to get overwhelming, where do they go back to? Emotional armor. It's the safe haven. Whether it's denial, whether it's hysteria, whether you're in a spiritual emergency or you are emerging, it's like it's your place of rest. So that you know how to move forward. And sometimes we need to be numb, because numb is still a state of being. You know, we say, oh, I'm numb, I'm numb. It doesn't mean you're not feeling. It just means that you are in a quiet place. It could be white, it could be dark, doesn't matter. It's quiet. You're numb. Depression can serve the same thing. Depression can be in service. Going down that very, very slippery slope. But it can also be an awakening. Very much an awakening. And so, in all of this, in all of the phases, they are awakening phases. So if you are new into this world, and your first year is going to be a year of firsts, and your second year is going to be a year of awakening. And that year of awakening is, oh, I've already had my year of firsts, oh, this is it. This is what I'm going to be dealing with right now. Okay, so I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at what my life is now going to be. So, I would like to talk about near-death experiences and the cycle of near-death experiences and how it affects us. Now, this is just a map, okay? And I'd like you to just take a moment and look at it, okay? So if you have a near-death experience or you've had a spiritual emergency, it's not that this is going to follow any one path, but my guess is, and I'd love a nod or hands as you kind of read through this. Does any of this look familiar or feel familiar? Like you've had a near-death experience or a spiritual emergency or a spiritual awakening, and it affects the way you think, and it affects maybe your body, it affects how you sleep, or the food, or your emotions, or your anger, your depression, how you think, your negative cognitions, what you tell yourself, or what you need to tell yourself. Does that make sense? Yeah. Good. Because it's right there. And if you can understand that this is normal, this is normal. This is just the way things are. I think it makes things calmer within one's soul. I think it just soothes you. If you say, okay, so this is what I'm going to experience. I'm going to experience some of these. I may only experience one of these things, not all. And I may experience all of them. Again, I go back to that word that I started with, listening. Listening. Listening to all the different parts of you. So I know that I've talked a lot about the negative and positive cognition, so I thought that I'd just give you some examples of negative and positive cognitions, just so you have an idea. And as you read through this list of negative and positive cognitions, see if they fit you. See, so right now, these are positive cognitions, you know, and if there's a positive cognition that actually speaks to you, but you feel you need more of, write it down. Give it to yourself. Think about it. Dream about it. And a great way to have active dreaming is to pick one of these and make it your mantra before you go to sleep. I am significant. I am okay just the way I am. I did the best I could. Okay? And just have that mantra, and you will be amazed at what dreams will come in. And when they come in, honor them. Write them down. Speak them into your phones, because they are fleeting. Now, I just want to say a little bit about dreams, just because we're in dreamland in this moment in time. Dreams are when a dream hangs around. So, have you guys had a dream where it's been fleeting? You wake up, you really don't remember. You have a feeling, right? Maybe a feeling in your gut, maybe a feeling in your heart, but it's gone. It's gone. And then have you had dreams where it's felt real? Like so real, like you're in it. You're completely in the dream, right? And it's in color, and you're thinking about it. Not just 24 hours later. You keep thinking about it. Those dreams are essential. They are so important because there's something spiritually awakening about them. There's something you need to look at. There's something you need to listen to. There's something that's very much communicating to you. I don't know what that is, but you do. And sometimes there's symbol. Sometimes it's very, very symbolic. Sometimes a door is just a door is just a door. Other times that door is saying, enter me. Come on in. And what's there? I don't know what's there, but that door is really important. So then what I would suggest that you do in this dream state is imagine that you're walking through a door, and actually even talk about the door to yourself. I'm walking through the door and I see a room, a field. And again, this is another aside in terms of past life regression. That is an active way of doing your own regression. I'm walking through something, whether it's a door, or up a tree, or you want to go into the underworld, and you want to travel in the water, which is pure emotion. Pure, lovely emotion. So these are the positive cognitions. And then we have the negative cognitions. And these negative cognitions are critics. They can be very archetypal. They get in our way. They get in the way of so much. They get in the way of our functioning. They get in the way of our relationships. They get in the way of us being our best selves. And so often, these negative cognitions, they're not even ours. I mean, we say them to ourselves, but they don't belong to us. So I hear you saying, so who do they belong to? If it's not me. Well, remember that crowded room? That very crowded room? Maybe they belong to somebody in that crowded room. Maybe that negative cognition you own, that you have been saying to yourself time and time again, oh, I'm fat, or I am unlovely, or I deserve to fail. All of these negative cognitions, they can't just be yours. We learn them somewhere along the way. Whether they're from this life or from a past life, we come in and we have to fight them. We have to fight these negative cognitions. And how do we fight them? We fight them in a variety of ways. One is through those positive cognitions. So if you're on your spiritual journey and some of these cognitions come up, guess what you're going to do? What are you going to do? I want to hear it.
Replace them with the positive.
Yes, you're going to replace it with the positive. What else are you going to do?
Repeat them.
You're going to repeat them. There's no wrong answer here, okay? What else are you going to do?
Journal about it.
You're going to journal about it. You got it. What else are you going to do? One more. Come on.
Dream.
Faith. What?
Dream.
Yes. Great. And you're going to counter the negative with the positive. And that's active. It's got to be active. Your spiritual life is active. These countering negative cognitions, it's got to be active. I'm countering these negative cognitions. I'm countering someone's criticism of me. I'm countering what I think someone else thinks of me. I'm countering it. And guess what that does to your spirit? What does it do to your soul?
Freeze it.
It frees it. What else does it do?
It nourishes it.
It nourishes it. What else does it do? What? Say it again.
Lifts it up.
Lifts it up. That's right. And what is the spiritual work about? Isn't it about the lifting up of the self? Isn't that what we're talking about here? That ownership? So these negative cognitions, they're around us. And they come around us. You've heard of archetypes, right? Okay. So they come around us as the trickster or the magician, and they go, oh, you're not really as good as you think you are. Or give me some negative cognitions.
I'm a failure.
I'm a failure. Okay, so I'm a failure, but meanwhile, things in your life are good. I am a failure, but really, you're feeling spiritually alive. So where is that voice coming from? How do you need to counter it? Well, give yourself data. Give yourself hard data. Like, okay, so when I think of failure, what would I check off as failure? Oh, well, I don't feed into any of those. So maybe I'm not a failure. So even imagining that there's skywriting above, this is an EMDR technique, there's skywriting above and it says, I am a failure. And it's right there in the sky, and then guess what happens? You wipe it out. You wipe it out. Or you put it into a hot air balloon. Again, these are tools that you have access to. And having access to these tools, you know what? You know what that makes you? A hero. You know what it makes you? It makes you warriors. You know what it makes you? It makes you so alive. Because you're fighting these archetypal voices that have no business following you. None. They have no business following you. It's like, no, am not allowed in my space. And someone came up to me during our break and said, you know, I kind of don't know what to do when like I'm in like the presence of people who kind of like psychically want to get close to me, and I don't really want them to get close to me, and they feel like they're, and this is not my term, but it's a great term, an energy vampire. You know, have you guys heard that term? Energy vampire, right? They're sucking your blood. So here, it's like you imagine, what is the archetype that I need around me? Do I need lover? Do I need a ribbon around me? Do I need color around me? What do I need? And in those moments of having either the lover or the mother or the great companion or the warrior or the hero, and it's like, no, I have this around me, and it is my protection. So to go back to psychic kids for a moment, I mean, I'm not really psychic, but I think I do perceive, and I pick things up just because we all do. It's just that I'm listening, and I know that you all can listen too, but when I'm listening, I know, okay, I need to put boundaries around myself. I need to put, but not a negative boundary. It's, I'm gonna put the lover around me. I'm gonna put kindness around me. But you are not allowed to enter and be the vampire. And when you create that energy field, because we all have energy fields, when you create that, in psychic kids, it was like no one was gonna get that close. And so I was fine. Now, there were people around that were really feeling the energies that these children were feeling, and it was like, no, I gotta work. And you can turn it on, and you have the power to turn it off. So that you can be your perceptive self, or you can protect yourself. It's turning the light on, and turning it off. And turning the light on, and it's a switch. And you've got the power. And you can, again, like these negative and positive cognitions, you can turn them up, and you can turn them down. I know my negative cognitions, they're loud. They are loud. They come and they knock. I'm like, oof, no. But sometimes they beg to be heard. And they're part of that spiritual awakening. They're part of that ownership of what do I see, what do I need, who are you? And whose voice are you? So I'd like to bring this into the conversation because these are tools that you can use every single day. If you question what's going on with you spiritually, if somebody is questioning you, you can say, I don't want this negative cognition, but there's something I need to be paying attention to. So, we're going to move on now to this crowded room. And I know that we talked about the crowded room, but I just want you to really, when you walk into a space, I want you to think, it's not just 40 people in this room. There's probably 120. Not even because of a spiritual sense, but because we are all affected by who we have relationships with, whether they are here on this plane or not. So I would just be aware that when someone comes up to you and maybe you're annoyed, maybe it's not them that you're annoyed with, maybe it's their crowded room you're annoyed with. And it gives a way to kind of be. It gives a way to be within your own self. And it's powerful. It's powerful to have the heart to say, wow, that person's room must be really crowded. And maybe they're hungry, and maybe they're yearning. And I have a decision. I can hear your yearning, or I can say, you know what, I can't do this right now. And that's okay. With kindness, with love. I can't do this right now. So this crowded room is really, really important. Also because in past life and past life regression, and that's where we're going now, it is so powerful, that crowded room. So I studied with Brian Weiss. Have you ever heard of Brian Weiss by any chance?
Yep.
Oh, I see a lot of nods on that one. Good. Have you ever heard of Roger Woolger? Okay. So Roger Woolger, what I loved about studying with these two very different men, and they are very different men. Unfortunately, we did lose Roger in 2011. But what was amazing about these two men was that they came at past life regression from two completely different perspectives. So Brian Weiss was a doctor, is a doctor. He's a psychiatrist. He trained at, I think, Yale. And, you know, he had these amazing experiences with his clients. And he was like, oh my God, like, they're going way back as I'm just trying to hypnotize them and help them quit smoking or help them deal with something that's going on energetically. And all of a sudden they started repeating stories that were from another time. And it was unbelievable. It was just, it was so unbelievable that he wrote about it. And he had case study after case study after case study. And he was, and still is, a wonderful teacher. The way he would do past life is through hypnosis. And that was how you got into your past life. Roger Woolger was a more physical way of getting into past life. And his past lives, when you did a past life regression with him or in any of his groups, it was intense. You lay down on a mat, you had 2 or 3 people around you, you had your lead person who would say to you, I want you to go deeper and deeper. And you're walking and you're walking and you're walking, and you, as you're in your mind walking, he wants you to move your feet. Because he was of the firm belief that we hold it in our bodies. And we do. We, you know, Carl Jung, was a advocate, believer, creator of the collective unconscious, right? And the collective unconscious is what we all carry within us. The generations, the generations and generations before us, and how we carry generationally all of those lives, all of the people, all of our histories within us today. And that is the collective unconscious, what we carry within us. And it's dynamic, and it's compelling. And, you know, it's like sometimes I look at my hands and I go, God, they don't look like girls' hands. They look like more masculine. And then, and it's like, to me, that's part of the collective unconscious. It's like there's something that I carry. And indeed, just as a backtrack to my own past life regressions, I haven't been a woman, a girl, for very many lives. And I have had to learn how to be in this world as a girl. I didn't really play with dolls. I didn't really like play. I didn't know how to have girlfriends. I just didn't know. I liked men. I liked boys. I liked talking with them. And I was like at a loss. And so in my past lives, which I have tracked 4 of them intensely, they were all men. And from all walks of life. And none of them died well. None of them died well. Which then makes me also believe that this whole thing that I have with death and dying, and my concentration in death and dying and grief and trauma and past life regression and shamanism, that all of those lives and the lives that left this planet, some out of grace, some painfully so, that they were they wanted to have their stories told. And they wanted to be heard. And that's what, to me, grief is about, is that we want our stories to be heard. So much so. And we want to be seen. As part of this hero's journey, we need to be listened to as the storytellers of our pain, of our grief, of our mourning. So, okay, so now, Roger Wilbur, he has us walk like we're really walking. We're lying down, he has us move our legs. It is very physical. It is very draining, his past life regression. It is so draining that by the end, all you want to do is sleep. You just want to sleep. So you are, if you're climbing a tree, you are in your body climbing a tree. So everything, your body is feeling what is going on. And what was magnificent is that you were also somehow hypnotized through this. I don't know how, but it happened. And you didn't know that 3 hours had passed. It felt like 10 minutes, which usually with hypnosis is the same thing. Like when I hypnotize people and I ask, how much time did you think just passed? They go, oh, 5 minutes, and it's been, I don't know, an hour and 15. Because it's like we go there and we leave in such a flash, it's unbelievable. Because our brains are shifting and they're changed and it's different and it's exciting and it's and we're jumping planes. We've just traveled. So there I am, Roger Wilbur. I'm walking with my legs while I'm on a mat, and I'm climbing up trees. And so this past life regression was one of my most intense past life regressions. Have you experienced past life regression? Anyone else? Okay, all right. So let me also just say that, wow, that's amazing that so many of you have had that experience, and that if you haven't, I highly recommend even going through that door that we talked about and just imagining what's on that path and what do you see, and allow yourself to just feel your body. And you can do it with music in the background, you can do it any way you'd like, and you can even just say to yourself, I want to see, I want to experience, I want to know, let me see. And you're giving yourself permission, because we're scared. It's scary. It's really scary to let go like that. So there I am, doing this whole thing, and I see myself. I am from some indigenous tribe. I am male. I have darker skin. I have a ponytail, and I have been left, and I may get emotional here, so forgive me, but every time I retell something like this, it is not like a dream. I can tell you every detail. I see it with such clarity that it is as if I am living it now. And though you can't really see me, I have chills on my arms right now. That's my, okay, this happened. Okay, I know. So there I am, from this indigenous tribe. I know that it's somewhere within the Americas. I don't have a specific place, but I have been left by the men to take care of the women. And another tribe knows that I have been left, as this shaman medicine healer. And I have been left to take care of these women and children and the elders. And we are attacked, and they kill everyone but me. And they know that by killing everyone but me, that I will then have to answer to the men who return. And they also know that there's only one way for me to deal with that, and that's ultimately for me to end my own life. And it is so intense to know that I must face these men, and then I must end my life. And I cry, and I moan, and I mourn, and I don't bury these bodies because in this massacre, no one should see what I saw. So I burn all of the bodies so that no one can see what I saw. And the men come back, and I tell them what happened like a good storyteller and healer, and then I kill myself. And what I feel is regret that I could not use my medicine to stop the attack, and that these men left me, the husbands, the brothers, the fathers of these women and children and elders, that I couldn't do it. I couldn't protect. And what I can tell you in this life is that one of the urges that I have is to protect at all costs. I will let go of my own self. I will not do for myself. And I will feel like, and it's going to sound ridiculous, okay? I just want to get my hair cut. But my friend needs me. And I'm going to go and I'm going to be with my friend. Now that sounds like so banal, but it's like, it is that small and it's that big. And it is almost a life of giving up. I am going to give. I want to give. I want to help. And that kind of brings me to my 9/11 story a little bit. Someone, as I was entering, said, "Thank you so much for what you did." And what I said was, "You don't understand. It wasn't a choice." So I'm not going to go into the entire story, but suffice it to say that I ended up down at the pits at the World Trade Center. And I had the men were coming in from the pits, which is where they were looking for life. And these men came out from these pits, and we as therapists were there to greet them and to help them come back into their bodies, because it is a loss of body sense when you are a first responder. I didn't think about danger. I wasn't scared, and I'm a scaredy cat, okay? I really am a scaredy cat, but it was just, this has to be done. There was no choice. I got onto a train, and I got there, and I through a series of spiritual occurrences, I ended up down there. And I was down there for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. It was hard, it was scary, only in that we couldn't find, they didn't find bodies, they didn't find survivors. But it wasn't a choice. It's not a choice. You will hear religious people say it's not a choice. An NDE, a spiritual emergency, is not a choice. These aren't the choices that we make, because we're facing ourselves in very big ways. So we're just gonna go to this. It's kind of blurry, but, so this is the book that is out there, and I wanted to talk about having a leap of faith, because really that's what the cover is about. And that when you're in a spiritual emergency, when there's a spiritual emergence, when you've had a near-death experience, when you are doing very much highly involved in a past life regression, you must take a leap of faith. And this cover is actually not meant, it wasn't meant to be taken from the tarot, but it is actually very much part of the Fool's card of the tarot, where the Fool is on a ledge, usually has a little dog, and the Fool is jumping off the ledge. And the thing about the jump is that you don't know if there's going to be anybody to catch you. But you must take this leap, because when you don't take the leap, you stay exactly where you are, contemplating the leap, contemplating the change, contemplating how am I going to cope with my grief, with my losses, how am I going to do this? So it is about taking a leap of faith. Whether it's grief, whether it's coming back into this life after having had a near-death experience. The suicide rate for people who've had near-death experiences is pretty high, about 22%, pretty high. Do you know why? What'd you say?
They want to go back.
They want to go back? That's right. What else? They're not afraid. What else?
Can't adjust when they get back.
Say that again?
Can't adjust.
They can't adjust. Who am I? I don't know where I belong. And remember those negative cognitions we were just talking about? Do you know how powerful they can be? With someone who's had a near-death experience, and how sometimes there can be questioning. Not necessarily, but that's the other side of this. Who am I? There can also be curiosity, just like Dr. Atwater talks about. But what is going on here? This darkness. And I'm alone. And I have no one and nowhere to share this with. Nowhere to go. So this leap, is like, how do you take a leap in your life? How do you take a leap in your soul? How do you take these leaps? They're really important. So I'd like you to think about where you need to be taking a leap. What is the leap you need to be taking? Might not be a question you ask, but it's a question that you might want to be asking. What needs to change? What needs to be different? How do you do it? Remember that listening? Listening, listening, listening. It is about that listening. I want to show you something. I wish there was a way for me to do this without having to scroll through everything, but I'm just not. I want to show you this. This is what our lives look like. The self is in the middle. It's really hard to see what everything is written. But this right here, that's the hero's journey. That's the hero's journey, right there. 12 stages. And then off of that comes what you need to face. And what you need to face is your own thing. And it's potent and it's powerful. But within that Ouroboros, within every death, there's birth, there's life. So this diagram is a diagram that you can create on your own. And I'd like to just go very quickly through the 12 stages of the hero's journey, and then I'd like to just open it up to any questions you might have. And this hero's journey is really compelling. I'm not going to define it per se, but I'd really just love for you to hear it. And if there's anything that really speaks to you, write it down. So it starts with the ordinary world, the world that you know. And then it goes to the call to adventure. What's the call to adventure? The call to adventure is the transition marker. And it's calling you. Remember that knock? It's knock, 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 knock. Let me out of here. That's the call to adventure. Knock, 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 knock. Come, get me. Then there's a threshold, and you must cross the first threshold. And what is that threshold? It's the point of no return. You can look back, but you have crossed over it. You've crossed over that threshold. And it is the point of a death, of a loss, of something within you. Why? Because you're moving toward a birth. Then you meet your trials, you meet your friends and your foes, self-explanatory. And then you've got your magical mentors. Now your magical mentors, oh my God, they are really exciting. You know why? Because they're the Marvel comics. They're the Wizard of Oz. They are the stories of the hero's journey. Or someone is facing something. The Wizard of Oz is one of my favorite hero's journeys. It's wonderful. Why is it, and why are we still talking about it? I think it came out in what, 1939? Thank you, 1939?
Yes.
Wow, okay, wow, 1939, okay. Wizard of Oz, it is now 2019. 80 years. That's a true hero's journey. Because it sticks, it's stuck. We relate to it, it's still relatable. The Wizard of Oz is just amazing. She starts out on her journey, and she's running away from home because she can't stand it anymore. She absolutely can't stand it. She's like, I'm out of here. I'm out of here. And then there's that huge storm, the storm of the psyche, the massive storm of the psyche. And she's like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. And she's riding, and then she can't find safety. And then she goes to another world. And that world is, oh my God. It's initially really scary. And that's where the trial begins. And she meets her foes. And she meets who she can befriend and who she needs to be careful of. And then, of course, there's another threshold. It's the dragon's lair. And the dragon's lair in The Wizard of Oz, as an example, could be the witch. And I'm not talking about the nice one, okay? And that witch is cruel, and she's mean, and she's just wants to just kill her. But she meets 3 really cool folks on her way, doesn't she? Who does she meet? The Scarecrow? Who else? Tin Man? Who else?
The lion.
The lion. The lion, the courageous lion. Who wasn't so courageous, right? Not so courageous. So, but again, it's a spiritual journey. It's like we need to find out who are our friends, who are our foes. If we've got a wicked witch who plants poppies, we need to realize that that's a wicked witch. And what are those poppies? And how do those poppies create landmines? And how do we counter those landmines? And there's that moment of despair. Oh my God, I'm in the poppy field. And then there's sleep, right? But then from that sleep there becomes an awakening, and the awakening is so amazing. It's so delicious. And you know why it's so delicious? It's an awakening that says, I am not in that poppy field. I am up. I am awake. I am great. And you know what makes me so great? I'm spiritually alive. And I have not succumbed. And yes, there might be a little bit of an emergency, but there's more of an emergence than an emergency. And she starts to listen in ways that she hadn't listened before. And then she meets who's behind the veil. Oz, the wizard, right? Yes. And she meets the wizard who's not a wizard at all. He's just this guy from Kansas, right? And he's this great guy from Kansas. And then she realizes she's had the power all along. Huh? And where was the power? Where was the power?
In her slippers.
Yes, in her shoes. But what do shoes cover? And what are the bottoms of our feet? Oh, yes! She gets to her soul. And guess what? Then she's got the elixir. And the elixir is her soul. And she's then able to go home. And what I offer all of you is that elixir. And I so want to thank you for allowing me to feel this crowded room. And I'd like to thank you for letting me share in your journey. And if there was one thing that you learned, then that's delicious. And I hope that all of you find your shoes in your journeys. And that you're not afraid to take your shoes off, to look at your souls, to put them back on. And I'd like to just offer up that if anybody has any questions about, I don't know, this hero's journey that we've all been on today, I'm certainly open to any questions. I will repeat the question so everybody can hear, and then we can, say, I'll see you another time. Are there any questions? Yes?
Yeah, first of all, could I say that you've exceeded all expectations as a speaker?
Thank you.
My question is that I've always felt that I've known a number of lifetimes, but it's never been facilitated. But they sure are real to me. And I'm thinking that it's as real as if somebody facilitated it.
So the comment / I think question is, no one has facilitated a past life regression, but you have experienced them, and they are as real as if you've had a facilitator.
I'm sure. I mean,
So
it's real
trust that. Trust it. Write it down. Speak it. What we know is when, we are all storytellers. What we know is when we tell a story, when we tell our past life, more information can come in. Does that help?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yes?
First, what was Roger's background? We talked about life being a psychiatrist. And, you know, in the field of trauma now, somatic psychotherapy and EMDR and all this big, what was Roger's background that brought him into a very somatic approach to past life regression?
So the question is, what was Roger Woolger's background based on the fact that he, and I love, like I lost my word on somatic, but yes, he was a somatic, he taught us how to somatically experience past life regression. Great question. So what was his background? I have to tell you, I don't know. I think that he was a therapist, but I only knew him as a past life regression doula. And the physicality added everything to the experience. But I will find that out. And if you give me your email, I will give you that information. I will certainly do my research on that. Thank you. Yes?
So my other question was, if I heard you correctly, did your introduction or starting to get connected with near-death experiences start when you started working with people with HIV, or was it before that?
No, I would say that it started with myself. Really like what I consider like an in utero loss. I didn't identify that until much later. I knew that I felt lost. I knew that I was an outlier. I knew that I was curious. I knew all of the things like I just wanted to be with the elders. I loved their music. I loved watching them play mahjong. I don't know, it was crazy. It was like, but so there was something knowing that I didn't understand. That after reading as much, there's not a whole lot about in utero NDEs, but that's where I have gone with it. Anyone else? Okay.
Just a curiosity question.
Sure, curiosity question. We love curiosity questions.
So the remembrances that you have when you were 2 and 4 years old, are these stories that have come down from your parents or some things that you actually remember?
Okay, so the question was, were the stories of me at 2 and 4, were they told to me and therefore I am telling them as a retell, or do I remember them? And I remember them. Oh, I remember them vividly. Yes. And in one of my, in one of the other ways that I will use regression and regression therapy is it's so amazing. I will go into like either a birth experience, like I went into my mother's birthing experience, and then I also went into early like infancy, like from birth to like 8 months. And I called my mom and I said, listen, I see myself in a crib outside of your door they were in an apartment, was my crib when you walked out the door and you then turned to the right. Was I on the right? And did you look at me a couple of times when I was crying and say, no, you just, no. And then go back into your room? And it was like, and I described the crib, and she was like, yes. So it was me coming to her.
Define spiritual emergency.
Define spiritual emergency. Okay, so a spiritual emergency occurs when you have either had too much coming at you that's new information spiritually that you have not been privy to before, and it feels overwhelming. A spiritual emergency can also occur because of a drug reaction. You've gone on a trip, some kind of a drug reaction, and you have a spiritual experience, but it is overwhelming. What you saw, what you felt, it was just too much. So a spiritual emergency can also happen when you cannot put the pieces of the puzzle together and you cannot make sense of it, and there's no language around it. So those are some spiritual emergency will often happen for someone who's left their body and doesn't understand what's occurred and they come back, near-death experience. For me, it also happened after I've had a couple of past life regressions, or when I was born. So.
Hey, did I hear you right saying that there's a spiritual emergency now happening with?
So in the spiritual emergency, yes, within the world of not being in contact with one another. So that's what I'm thinking of as a spiritual emergency, that when babies are not touched, what happens to them?
They don't thrive.
Thank you.
It's called marasmus.
Marasmus, okay, I didn't know that. I was gonna just call it failure to thrive.
Right.
But failure to thrive, babies don't thrive. Guess what? I don't care how old you are, if you're not touched, we don't thrive. And I'm not talking sexual touch. I'm just talking, we need contact. We need contact. That's why people who are elders, when they have animals, they do far better. Because I don't care if it's human contact or animal contact, it doesn't matter. It's contact. It's contact. We need contact. Thank you. Yes, hi.
Hi, what is your perspective of water in dreams?
Water in dreams. Do we have another hour and a half? Okay. It's pure emotion. You're going in, you're going deep, you're going under. I think of it as going into the underworld. It is usually filled with, underworld is going into the unconscious and looking at what we might not want to see. Or something that we do want to see, but we need clarification. But it also represents emotion. Pure, unadulterated emotion that just touches the heart. Can be a little scary, but what's curious about dreams with water, if you're in the water, isn't it amazing that you can breathe? So it's very much filled with oxygen. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. 1 second. Yes?
Just curious, how, I've done a couple of past life regressions, and how can you tell the difference between what is authentic and what is your, more or less, because I've done, one actually I did on myself, using.
Great. If you did it on yourself, that's fantastic.
He had a book, I believe it was called The Mirrors of Time, I'm not 100% sure. There was a CD, and I had experiences that seemed unbidden, if you will, that seemed authentic. And then I actually went and had one done, and it just didn't seem authentic to me. It seemed like it was just my imagination.
Okay, so the question is, what is the difference between a past life regression that is authentic and one that isn't authentic? Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Okay, how do you know? How do you know? So, it's a question that I get asked all the time. Whether I'm speaking about it or whether I'm talking to clients about it. The thing is, it doesn't matter. I'll tell you what matters. If what you did in that regression made a difference in your life, then I don't care if it's real or not.
Well,
It made a difference.
kind of seemed to, the one I just thought I was just making up a story.
And if someone is telling you what they see, to me, and there's a large discussions about this, so I know that I'm being very controversial in this moment, because I know that people are seers and they can feel things, but I really do believe that for the change to occur, we need to feel it in our bodies. And to feel it in the body means that we've gotta see it, rather than having someone see it for us. It is the somatic experiencing. It is that somatic experiencing.
What's the best way to find someone that you would be trustworthy of to go through that?
Okay, so what is the best way to find someone? I don't really have an answer for you. I think you need to feel them. And maybe what you did on your own with that tape or CD was your answer. If that was what was real for you, oh, that's great. What's really great, though, is you can keep going back into that. So I know you guys remember that I talked about the woman that I worked with for a year, and I told you I would get back to it, so I'm going to get back to it in this moment. Because when she came in, she was in a relationship with a woman. She was financially doing well. She was unhappy at work. She was unhappy in her relationship. And she just didn't know what to do. Her past life, she was a man, she was at sea, and what we were able to go through in terms of each little part of being at sea and the aloneness and the fear of not ever feeling like an attachment and the sense of grief, she realized that her partner made her feel that way. And that she had to find a way to get off the boat. And once we got her off the boat, she ended her relationship. She quit her job as a dentist. And everything made sense. And she went and got into a different relationship. And she changed her professions. And the grief that she was feeling became more of a partner than something she was fighting. And that's what I talk about in my book, is how to partner with your grief. Any other questions? Oh my, okay, yes.
Hi, first off, I'd like to second this lady's emotion. This has been a transformative experience, and thank you.
Thank you.
I find that I often, when you talk about the tempest or the storm, and I've used affirmations in the past, but when I'm in it, I can't make that leap or that link. I've considered maybe using a rubber band or something. To just
I love rubber bands, actually.
Okay.
So when you meet the tempest,
Yeah.
or you're in that trap, rubber bands are fantastic.
Okay.
Actually, a rubber band around the wrist or putting your hands into cold water are one of the easiest, best techniques to shift. To shift out of, to shift back in, to get centered. You get angry, you're so angry that you're just raging, and I know what that anger is. I lived it, I've experienced it, and I put my hand into cold water, snap the rubber band, and it is actually a biofeedback exercise. You have the rubber band, you snap it, you say, stop it, big stop it, and then you think about something beautiful, like that waterfall, or a rainbow. Or I love the hot air balloons. I don't really like heights, but I love the hot air balloons, and you put all of that crap into the hot air balloon, and you just let it float. Bye, see you later. And you know what? It's going to come back and it'll knock, and you'll feel the tempest again. And you know what you do with the tempest? Okay, I know you're here. I'm going to get rid of you, but is there something you can bring to me in my dreams so that I can better understand why you come? Yes?
Hopefully this is a quick question. Is your talk today in the book, or is it separate? I couldn't tell.
Okay, well, kind of in, no. Kind of, because I talk about archetypes, and I talk about grief, and I talk about owning the self. So it's all there. It's the platform of spirituality is not blatant, but I use the terms of the soul and the psyche throughout. The conscious and the unconscious, and coming home to the conscious and coming home to what we know and what we don't know. So, thank you. Yes?
How important is the value of beauty in our lives?
Oh, how important is the value of beauty? Oh, wow. What do you think?
You want me to answer my
I do, absolutely, yes.
Well, I would say that it's extremely important.
It's extremely important.
On all levels.
Yes.
All levels. The aesthetics of things increasingly appeals to me, but it's more than a superficial recognition of beauty. I mean, it can be on a spiritual level.
That's right.
It can be
I'm going to just repeat a little bit of what you just said. So it can be a spiritual beauty, it can be a transformational beauty,
It could be in music.
it can be in music, it can be in art, it can be in just the way you speak. Okay?
It could be a sunset.
It can be a sunset, it can be a sunrise. So, but that's where, what did I start with today? Listening. That's where the listening comes in. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. Thank you. Yes.
As a therapist, I'm a therapist as well.
Hi.
How do you work with people, you know, like some people will say, oh, you were just having a fantasy, that was just a dream, it didn't really happen, or maybe you have psychosis. I mean, in some cases that could be what's going on, but I absolutely believe in near-death experiences and all, you know, all of that. But
So the question is,
how do you discern to know? Because there are some people who might be actively psychotic.
you're right. And so there might be some people who are actively psychotic, and they're also coming in for help because they're in a spiritual emergency. And the two can be mutually exclusive. Okay? They can still have their psychosis, and they could be having a spiritual emergency. So what's important here, really important, is to say, okay, so your psychotic self, it can be right here. But right now we're going to talk about your spiritual emergency. And if your psychotic self wants to talk about the spiritual emergency, let the psychotic self talk about the spiritual emergency. It doesn't matter. If the psychotic self wants to hurt the self or wants to hurt someone else, that's when it matters, of course, of course. But tempering it, I don't care if it's fantasy, if it's affecting you negatively, we're going to go in. And we're going to go in and we're going to say, okay, so I don't care if this is a dream, a fantasy, if it happened to you or it didn't. You know, what matters is you're affected by it. You need to be held. You need a witness. You need someone who's going to listen and guide. Trust. Remember those psychic kids?
Yep.
That's what they needed. So I want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you so much. I had a blast.